Yes, we've got a fish on, Jared. Oh, I don't know what the hell is this? What is this? What is this? Oh, what is this? Oh, goodness me, I've got something like, it's a monster. I'm not sure what it is. Jared, any idea what I've got?
No idea.
Oh, my goodness me. God, who set the clutch on this? This is not working right. Oh, look at the bend in the rod. It's absolute clunker. Come on. Come to daddy. Come to daddy. Come to daddy. Oh, what have we got? Oh, hello, I've caught myself a little croc. Amazing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be doing part 2 of a blog that we're doing today on the 14th of Jan. So, I hope you enjoyed that little entry there. Did you recognise the music at all?
I did, yeah. It's John Wilson, isn't it?
It's John Wilson, yeah. And unfortunately he's passed last year, I believe. When I grew up, one of the reasons I got into fishing is I used to watch a lot of Johnny Wilson's films. And he got me into fishing in a big way. I mean, I used to fish before he was on TV, but back in the 80s, in the 70s, he had massive, he was one of the first pioneers of fishing TV. And I loved it, and I think a lot of people out there loved it as well. But he lives about 1,200 miles from Malaysia. He went and moved to Thailand because of his health. And he had lakes out there and lots of venues, and he did foreign fishing holidays out there. And today, when I picked up my mails from the YouTube, Rob sent me a beautiful message which I wanted to share with you, if I may. And I must admit, it was like waking up at Christmas morning when I saw Rob's beautiful message. And this is what Rob said. I'll just share a little bit with you because it is 2 pages long. Okay, Professor Balls. Okay. But boy, to me that just shows a lot of love and care. And I think this is the other thing, is there's a thought for the day, or for the afternoon. Teddy Roosevelt said, "Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care." Now just think about that for a second. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think with Rob, Professor Balls, very knowledgeable, but what makes him, in me, what makes me feel so pulled towards him is his caring nature. Now we did a swap, it was a sticker swap and a t-shirt swap. So in the hobby a lot of us get t-shirts made up because we want to build relationships with each other. And because I've been following Rob as part of the Four Horsemen for quite a long time, I got super excited when I started to see his films, and Richard introduced him to me, so thank you, Richard. And by the way, Richard, can I just say that you put out a fantastic film last night. If you haven't seen it, guys, go see it. And it kind of supports and sustains what we're doing here, because you know we spoke about putting in multis to help your females and males go through the breeding season and how that is so effective. Well, what I like about Rich, he's very thorough, very much like Rob, and he gave us a three-way angle to looking at how to help our snakes. And he focused on feeding in winter conditions, and we're all in the winter, and he was saying that some of his snakes are going off food because of the winter conditions. And he was saying that as the winter brings in colder conditions, the snake's digestive system needs heat to digest the food. So even though we try to keep the ambient temperature constant in here, we might adjust it occasionally, it does get impacted by the outside weather. And so the snakes instinctively know that they're in their winter period, because it's not just the temperatures, they feel the pressure, the low pressure. And you can control pressure within an environment, but it's very expensive. So even if you get your temps constant and you think you can do all year breeding, it's not necessarily the case, because if the snakes don't sense low pressure, now low pressure, as I said in my part 1, invites the salmon to come up the rivers, because of the river, the rainfall, all the rest of it. That gets into the river pumps into the harbour, and that is like a dinner bell ringing off for the salmon to run up and to spawn up in the rivers. And did you know that with the salmon, they go back to the very spot where they were originally spawned to lay their eggs? We're not talking like within half a mile. They go to the very, what they call it the redds. It's a nest for salmon, and it's called the salmon redds. And most of those salmon could go on a 4,000 to 6,000 mile journey to pack on weight out at sea, and they come back a year or two later, depending on how long they want to stay out for, and they can pack on so much weight, they have a system where they can come back and navigate. How they do it, I do not know, but I've got a feeling there's electrical forces, there's something going on. They've almost got their own GPS built in, and they can find and taste the very flavour of the river that they were spawned in to help them navigate back to their home. I find it just incredible, but please do, if you want to get into it, please have a look at that. I find it fascinating. But the reason I was talking about this, coming back to Richard's videos, he was saying that there's 3 different groups in his collection that have different feeding instincts at different times. So the hatchlings, he was saying, are feeding brilliantly. And we can say our hatchlings, Jared, you've had 200% back-to-back so far, haven't you?
Mm.
Nothing has refused food. I mean, initially when they come out of the egg, 1 or 2 of them need time to get used to the idea of taking a rat. So you'll find that the first part of the breeding, of the raising of a hatchling is quite challenging for most beginners. So I'm very lucky. I've got Jared who knows how to assist feed. He knows how to bring them on. And Rich, I think, is very good as well, because he gets his feeding quickly. And then once they start feeding, it's normally very easy to feed them once they get going. So he was saying in the winter, hatchlings have no impact. And then the second part of his collection that he said does give him sometimes some issues, which I think gives us all issues, is the subadults. Now what he was saying is, with the subadults that get up to say 1,000 grams, they hit what they call the 1,000 gram wall. And a lot of breeders tell me that the issue that they have is that they worry that the snakes can't get beyond the 1,000. And what Rich was saying is, don't worry, it's probably very natural.
Is it the rod? So I was wondering what that was.
If you're wondering what the banging was, I was going to check the snakes, Joe, but I think it was a different kind of banging. I'll be very impressed. We could actually have a quick look and see if Joker's already, whether he's already locked up, Jared.
No, leave him be.
Yeah.
Some time.
No, I wouldn't do that. When you put them in, don't go straight away. Be patient. Patience is the name of the game. But so come back to Richard's video. He was saying that the subadults in his collection, he's used to 1 or 2 of them actually going off food for a bit, and not to panic and worry, because they've built up quite a lot of weight, and particularly the girls. He said it's less of a problem with the boys, but he says the girls switch off. Have we ever had that in our collection, Jared?
Yeah, I've had a couple snakes that are about 1,000 grams turn off food for a few weeks.
For just a few weeks. They don't turn off for that long. So what do you think's going on there? What's causing them to switch off?
I'm not sure. I think there might some sort of maturity happening, something going on in their body.
Because I think Richard tries to answer that question. Have a look at his video. I don't want to regurgitate Richard's content, but all I know is I'm very happy about it, because he's given me a lot of new information, helped me understand what's going on, because you don't want to confuse one behaviour with another just because they're switched off. And then the third group that he covered was the adults, and then he talked about when males and females go off food during the breeding cycle, which we've covered, which I think that video was absolutely spot on, Rich, so thank you very much for that. So coming back to Rob, let's just read his opening paragraph. He said, this is how humble Rob is, and I love his humility. He says, what an honour to be on your channel. And I'm thinking, it's our honour to have you. And very, very well presented, Jared and Paul. Thanks, Rob. I love fishing, and when I saw that, I thought, yeah, we've got a fellow brother. I mean, a real brother. I mean, we're talking like a brother in more than one ways of one. Snake, family, fishing, and I'm guessing probably food. And I know that the food in Malaysia is to die for, so when we come over and see you, I'm sure you're going to take us to some really nice restaurants, Rob, and we look forward to that. So he's saying, I love fishing, and there are some great opportunities for tropical sports fishing here. Romping is the place. More sailfish than you can shake a stick at. 20 or 30 sailfish released per boat per day is not uncommon here.
Wow.
Jack, bring me that rod. I'm going straight away. I mean, unfortunately, we're in lockdown. We're going to have to be patient. But we'll be patient, and the day will come when we can travel. And I'll bring Jared with me as well, because Jared is my fishing buddy, aren't you, Jared? We're going to work hard, save some money, and we're going to come over when it's all safe, and we'll have a lovely game fishing holiday over with you, Rob. So what Rob likes to do is he says, I like to fish for them using massive streamer fly poppers and 13 weight double-handed fly rods with at least 300 meters of backing. Can't you imagine that? Oh, lovely. So I'm a salmon fisherman, so I know how to use a two-handed rod, and we do a lot of spade casting on the rivers. And I fished in my backyard here, but I also fish in Scotland. So handling a two-handed fly rod is going to be a joy. And I'll bring my own. It'd be interesting to know what size they are, but off a boat, how they do it. But I'm guessing it's probably spade casting off the boat, I'm guessing. So a 13 weight double-handed fly rod with at least 300 meters of backing, a good sailfish of 25 kilograms or more will use every inch of line that you have on your reel, running at blinding speed and multiple jumps and tail walking. Oh my goodness. Oh, I look forward to connecting with one of those. I've never caught a sailfish, and that would be a lovely one. We'll bring PGTV with us on my other channel, and we'll do a really nice exotic fishing holiday. And then the other thing he's saying, Jared, being a Liverpool supporter, now I'm guessing that Rob's probably a Leeds supporter, but I might be wrong there, so maybe let us know, Rob. Leeds Liverpool Canal. He said the Leeds Liverpool Canal is just not the same after you do this kind of fishing. Oh. So now let's move on to, I've picked out here 15 points from Rob's beautiful response to our video, and I want to highlight these and pick them out because I think there's a hell of a lot to learn, and this will form subjects on our new channel, Snake Take. Say not new channel, our new series within this channel. So the first thing that Rob was saying is he uses the term cymatic, which is symbolic and simplified. So he says the breeding schedule that is a very asymmetric, means it's symbolic and simplified. So he's done that on purpose. He wants us to take the template and mess about with it to suit our requirements. So it's not going to prescribe and give you a solution to all your breeding issues, but it gives you that backdrop to work with. If you like, it's the skeleton frame that you can move to your timeline of when you start, and I like it very much because I'm into model building and all that kind of stuff. I love it. So the breeding schedule is similar. Okay. So he's saying it's just a rough idea of my season. Now you can simply slide the calendar scale around to match your own seasons. Okay, so that was the first point that I pulled out. The second point is that he says there's a key, temperature drops, referring to temperature drops. So he starts his pairing in November at the start of the rainy season. Temperatures drop a little, mainly at night, but the key, this is the bit I'm going to emphasize, is the increase in humidity at this time. So he's saying there's a temperature drop, but the humidity levels rise because of that at night. Isn't that interesting? And it's the humidity rise that actually triggers them into wanting to breed. So I didn't realise that. The air is thick and heavy, and conditions are very steamy at this time of year. My females will reach 25 millimeters follicles and go off food starting anywhere from February, but some of my females may continue eating until April or even later. The follicles continue to grow after they go off food, using their stored reserves in both body fat and from their livers, which have expanded at this time, to store the extra nutrients that they need. Isn't that interesting? So I love this. I love the detail. Follicles grow until they reach 45 millimeters, and when your female will ovulate. So my females will ovulate any time between April and June, or even later, which fortuitously is now a bit warmer and has less rain. Perfect for incubating eggs. Good point. Which now reminds me, talking of ovulations, I think Rich had his first ovulation yesterday, Jad.
Nice. On
his video, he showed it, and his pastel clown girl, I kid you not, I've never seen such a great picture of an ovulation, Rich. It's like the body of it was like if you get a Coca-Cola bottle and you stuck it into your snake, it was like that big. I've never seen such a, and that's when you're looking for an ovulation, and when we get our first ovulation, we're going to show you our first ovulation on this camera because we're doing a daily vlog. You're going to get it, and I think it lasts 24 hours, the actual swelling. So you can miss them if you're not keeping an eye on your snakes each day. You can miss an ovulation. We did. I missed 2 last year, and one of them was Colossus. She was so big, I couldn't see the ovulation. She was that big. So let's see what else. Rob is saying, point number 3, ovulation lasts 24 hours only. This is the time when the mature follicles are expelled from the ovaries and move into the oviduct. The developing eggs are not fertilized until this stage, using sperm stored by the female. So there's 2 good points there. And point number 6. Once the follicles are fertilized, they may reside in the oviduct for around another 6 weeks, undergoing cell division and formation of the shell, and then they are laid. Wow. This period is effectively part of the incubation period, and your female will seek temperatures around 88 Fahrenheit or 31 Celsius instead of cool seeking. So we've got to expect the girls to go back onto the heat mats then at that point, Jared, are we? So once they've cooled and they've gone through that process, they are moving on to incubation. Their incubation starts inside them, that's what Rob's saying.
Yeah.
So now when we get the eggs, we're getting excited because we're going to put them in incubation. Well, Rob is saying that the incubation process has started way before we get going. That's really interesting. Okay, let's move on to another point. Very noticeable changes in behaviour for you guys with heat mats, but not so much for me, because not so noticeable for me using ambient temps. I have experimented with heat mats in my tubs and a hotspot of 32 degrees Celsius during the maternity period. But I found my snakes didn't really use them, and it made no difference to the time between pre-lay shed and actual laying of the eggs. So now I just take the simple approach and let nature take its course. Isn't that interesting? Mother Nature's always the winning formula. Every time, in any aspect of my life, Mother Nature always produces the goods. Okay, so another point here. Once your female has ovulated, she will go on to lay. She cannot reabsorb the eggs. Now he's saying that ovulation is the point of no return. So once you get an ovulation, you've got to get super excited, because she's going to give you something, whether they're perfect eggs, infertile eggs, or whether they're slugs. So if you get an ovulation, you should jump for joy, because you are halfway there in this process, I would say. Now, it also says here, the period is affected. Okay, so we've got 30 degrees during the maternity period. Now, ovulation, she cannot reabsorb the eggs once they are in the oviduct. Now, what does reabsorb mean, Jared? And why would a girl reabsorb eggs?
Maybe they're not getting enough food, so they don't think they've got enough reserves to go through the whole period. I'm not sure other reasons, but...
Well, we had a couple of girls last year that seemed to reabsorb. They built up really good body mass. We were anticipating a clutch and didn't get an ovulation, didn't get any pre-lay shed. And I said to Jan, what's going on here? Everything was right. They've locked up 4 or 5 times. Why haven't they gone for us? And I'm only guessing they absorbed the eggs because they didn't give us anything. So some females who, like Jared was saying, if they don't feel they've got enough food in them to sustain the full process, they make a decision and they've got the ability to absorb the follicles.
I'm sure there's other factors as well, but
yeah.
I don't know what they are.
Yeah. I wonder whether they... Yeah, I'm not sure. We're still learning on that one, but we'd be interested to know anyone else's experiences or thoughts on that. Let's see if Rob might be able to give us some more light on this. It says here that she cannot reabsorb the eggs once they are in the oviduct. If she has insufficient sperm, the eggs may not be fertile, but she will still lay them as slugs or infertile eggs. This would be a shame, since she has gone all that way to growing the eggs and used a lot of her body reserves to get there that far. So make sure, this is the key point, make sure you continue to pair up your snakes all the way to ovulation. And if you think you've got an ovulation, but you're not sure, keep locking. Even though the female has stopped eating, that's the other critical point. So don't think that your female stopped eating, therefore she should stop breeding. She will still hook up. Okay. Now, this gives her the freshest, strongest, healthiest sperm possible. Now, on temperatures, I do not control anything. I do not adjust or drop temperatures. I use what nature provides again. My temperatures are approximate. Now he goes on to use a term called snake thermoregulate, which means, Jared, what does thermoregulate mean?
They choose how hot they want to be, they find where they want to go and they stay there.
Yeah, so by hugging a water bowl, they are thermoregulating. But what they're doing is they're wrapping themselves around the bowl with a view to cooling their body temperature, because they can actually adjust their temperature. And they can go up and down the gradient to adjust their temperature. Now Rob doesn't have a gradient because he's got ambient temperature all the way through. So he's got to be very on it as far as water changes and all the rest of it. Let's see what he does. He was saying here, by hugging the water bowl, it says here that snakes thermoregulate by hugging the water bowl, but otherwise cope very well with the ambient temperatures that the tropics provide. Water bowls. Now this is the point on water bowls. Yes, change the water regularly always, but it is actually the process of evaporation of the water from the bowl that cools the water bowl, and why my snakes and yours gravitate to the water bowl when they are building. The evaporation keeps the water bowl temperature about 5 degrees Fahrenheit lower than the ambient in my tubs, and by wrapping the bowl, the snakes can have as much of their surface area in contact with the bowl as possible to maximize the cooling effect. I have noticed my snakes will actually adjust the area of contact with the bowl to get their body temperature just right. Right, just 3 or 4 more points. My snakes typically will be at 88 degrees Fahrenheit or 31 degrees Celsius after a meal, and they will drop their temps to about 86, 85, 29, 30 while bowl wrapping. Cooler temps can cause digestive issues, but as long as your snakes can maintain 86 degrees Fahrenheit, they will be able to digest just fine. So that was my point. You know, earlier in the year I was saying how important it is to get your temps right. So for animals that weren't in the breeding cycle, that were going off food, it wasn't anything to do with breeding, it was to do with the fact that our temps weren't spot on and they couldn't digest the food. So that's another interesting one. Here in the tropics, the temperatures rise to 91 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 degrees Celsius. We call this the kill zone for sperm. Calls that the kill zone. I'm just going to get a drink, Joe. Thank you. So, why would that be called the kill zone, Jared?
Does it kill the sperm, the temperature, the heat?
Yeah, well it says here, Professor Balls, he's teaching us here at a critical point here that we need to be careful, because we can kill the whole thing off if we get our temps wrong. And I wonder whether temperature spikes in incubation also affect the development as well, because that can affect kinking. So a big spike or rise in temperature has a big impact on these animals. They're very sensitive. Even though they've got tolerance, they are sensitive to certain temps. So the kill zone to avoid, let's just read this carefully because I think it's very relevant to where we're moving towards. Here in the tropics, if temperatures rise to 91 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 degrees Celsius, we call this the kill zone for sperm. To everyone who uses the classic 32 Celsius hotspot for their snakes, my snakes never have access to temperatures this high. He tried it for maternity tubs, but they didn't like it, and they do just fine now. I believe prolonged exposure to temperatures above 89 and 90 or 31.6 degrees Celsius is actually damaging to sperm in the males. So I use a touch of air conditioning if my temperatures in the snake room get higher than 86 or 30 degrees Celsius. But bear in mind that my snakes do not have a cool side in their tubs to escape higher temperatures. So that's the point here, Joe. We're lucky we've got a temperature gradient. Rob is finding it hard to get that temperature gradient. So any male snake that's, say for example, we don't quite fine tune your temps, and let's say you are hitting high temps on the heat mat of 92 plus, or in this case he was 91. If a male decides to sit on there for too long, it can kill his sperm, and whatever sperm he's putting into the female, it's dead before it even gets in there. And that's probably why they produce infertile eggs, I'm guessing. One of the reasons. So it's key in this breeding process, I believe, to keep an eye on your temps all the way through this to make sure they don't spike and that males have somewhere to go to protect their sperm. Thank you, Rob. That's really helpful. Now we're getting down to point number 13, breeding all year round. We've got 5 minutes left, so we're going to wrap this up. Breeding all year round. He says, yes, my snakes will breed all year round. My first eggs were in April in 2020, and my last eggs were in October. In the tropics, the seasons and temperatures changes are far less marked than in temperature climates, But critically, barometric or pressures or atmospheric pressures are also much more stable, and it's those rainy, cool nights when the low pressure front comes through that I think is the stimulus to breed. Ball pythons are very sensitive to minute changes in temperature, humidity and pressure, and even the small changes in the tropics gets them in the mood. Thank you, that's really interesting. So, a couple more points. Now this point reinforces what Shane was saying, Joe. You know, Shane at Small Town was saying that if you've got a air conditioning unit and a fan that's circulating the air through the cocoa husk, it's less prone to mould. Yeah. So Rob, as supporting what Shane is saying here, is saying cocoa husk, substrate and mould. If your ambient humidities are a touch lower than mine, adequate ventilation with a fan will solve the issue. That's exactly what Shane says. But not on the tropics. Where humidity is in excess of 80% all the time. I have a fan in the snake room just so I can stay a bit more comfy, and it certainly helps keep things less musty. However, I cannot use any substrate in my ball python tubs other than paper, which is changed every time it gets soiled. If you have an issue maintaining humidity in drier, cooler climates, then damp cocoa husk is a perfect sponge to help regulate humidity in your tubs. That's lovely. That really does put clarity to that. Thank you, Rob. I do use substrate in my GTP
Green tree python.
That's something we would like to get one of those, wouldn't we, Jared? Beautiful animals. So his green tree python terraniums, but these have a powerful extractor fan in the back of the terranium, and the GTPs don't pee and poo anywhere near as much as the ball pythons. Incidentally, reticulated pythons are even worse. They pee by the bucketful, Jared. Now, Jared, you wanted to get a retic, didn't you?
Yeah, I like the super dwarf, the ones that stay smaller.
Yeah. One of our viewers asked us whether we were going to get more reptiles. What's the pros and cons of mixing reptiles in your collection?
I know certain reptiles have different diseases and can cause problems with other reptiles.
Yeah.
But I don't know too much about it.
Yeah. So I think it's lovely to have a variety in your collection, but I think also you have to look very carefully at balancing the animals that you've got so that there's two things. Number one, if you've got to, I guess, if your main focus is ball pythons and you start to build up other collections parallel that overstretch you, you've got to be careful you don't overstretch yourself. Number two, you've got to study very carefully, because in carp fishing, if you introduce one carp from one lake and put it in another lake, the Environment Agency have to get a special permit to transfer a fish, because one gene of carp could kill another gene of carp, and you've got to be really careful introducing a stock. Now, I don't know whether the same thing applies in snakes, but it's an interesting argument.
That's what quarantine is.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is I'm not talking about quarantine alone, I'm talking about a different strain of gene or
a
animal.
Different snake.
They may pass certain things on to your collection, so you've got to be really careful what you're doing.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people safely keep the green, they're very hard to keep, the green tree pythons, aren't they, Joe?
I don't know too much about it, to be honest.
But I've seen an awful lot of ball python enthusiasts have one or two in their facility, which tells me that it's fine as long as you know what you're doing. So thanks for that extra information, Rob. So I hope this helps with some of the detail your viewers asked about, for sure. So thank you, Rob. We appreciate a full response. Tomorrow we're going to talk about preventative medicine. So thank you for watching. If you liked the video, thumbs up, and we shall see you tomorrow. It's goodbye from Jared, goodbye from me, and goodbye from New Forest Morphs. Goodbye.